What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Game Script. We're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens in this one, and Pittsburgh are massive dogs in this game, but should they be? I'm going to break down all the scenarios right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Game Script. On today's episode, we're looking at the wild card game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. They're playing in Baltimore. We're looking at a 43.5 point total with Pittsburgh as 9.5 point dogs in this one. And this is a Pittsburgh team that's dominated Lamar Jackson since Lamar came into the league. He's only won 2 out of 6 games against Pittsburgh so far, and he includes a loss this year against Pittsburgh. So Lamar has not had a lot of success against this team. The team in general has been good against running quarterbacks, and Lamar is going to be in a tougher spot than I think most people realize tonight. And I'm not understanding where the 9.5 point spread comes from, but maybe there's something to that. But I'll build lineups for Showdown, DraftKings Showdown, for all those scenarios, and I'll get into it. But first, hit that like button, give me to 30 likes so I can put out a shorter video later on. And actually, I don't even put out I'm not even able to put out a shorter video later on, but I'll favorite picks in the comments section, and make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm looking for 1,600 subscribers. I need about 80 left to get there, so help me out with that. All right, guys, so let's dig into this matchup. So I think the first thing that we need to look at when we're talking about the Steelers and the Ravens is we need to look at Lamar Jackson's history. Their division rivalries. This is probably the worst draw that Baltimore could have gotten as far as the history between Lamar and the Steelers, but also just a division matchup in general. Teams know each other better than any other teams are going to know the Ravens, and it's not going to be very helpful for a Ravens team that has struggled in the playoffs. They did add, obviously, Derrick Henry recently, so they have that going for them. But if we're looking over at the career stats of Lamar Jackson versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming over to Pro Football Reference, you can kind of see the picture that it tells. We saw them win against Pittsburgh 34-17. Keep in mind, Pittsburgh did not have George Pickens in that game, and I believe they were banged up in the secondary. Other games, we're looking at a loss by the Ravens 16-18. They lost 10-17, 10-17, both games last year. Lamar was inactive for both games in 2022. He was inactive for one of the games in 21, but his last game was a loss 19-20. He also lost 24-28. And the last win that he had against them, apart from this year, was back in 2019, where he won 26-23. So only a 3-point win in that one. So Lamar has had a lot of struggles against this team. He played pretty well in the most recent game, 207 passing yards only, but he had 3 touchdowns in that one. As far as rushing touchdowns, he's never had a rushing touchdown against Pittsburgh either. So the upside with Lamar Jackson, at least on a historic basis, is going to be limited. And I think people are going to be playing him as though, he's the best captain option on the slate. And that's where we can get different. And that's where we can take advantage of this matchup. I'll check real quick and see where we're looking at for the showdown ownership on Lamar Jackson. All right, so I'm seeing a ownership projection in the captain at 23.7%. So that's going to help us fade 23.7% of the field by not having him in the captain spot. And the only other person with double-digit double-digit captain percentage is Derrick Henry, and he's at around 18%. Everybody else is under 10% projected ownership, and that is going to leave this wide open for us to potentially get us some sneaky lineups in. Derrick Henry, he's going to have a pretty medium matchup against Pittsburgh. He had 2 games against them, obviously, this season already. One of the games, he had 23.9 DraftKings points, and the other game, he ended up with 11.5 DraftKings points. So it really depends on what the game script is telling us here. The game in Week 11, they ended up losing 16-18, so they only scored 16 points. So the game script did not favor Derrick Henry necessarily. Let's see what Justice Hill did in that game. See if we can get a gauge of what his value is going to be in this week. So that was Week 11. Justice Hill had 8.1 DraftKings points. So Justice Hill didn't really do anything either. I think that game in Week 16 is where Justice Hill got a concussion, potentially. He only had 3 DraftKings points in that game. So if we're looking at the running back situation, Derrick Henry is no lock either at 18.3 in the captain for salary. If we go down to Pickens had one pretty decent game against them. In Week 11, he had 16.9 DraftKings points, and he did not play in the second game. He was inactive in that game. So Pickens, he's a guy that is kind of streaky, and he's coming off of a few poor games. He had 8 DraftKings points and 1 DraftKings points, but he's also the kind of guy that bounces back when you doubt him the most. And I've been burned by it a couple times. So George Pickens, I think he's definitely in play in this one. Baltimore was the team that we were targeting in the secondary earlier in the year, but they definitely cleaned things up, and they're only allowing now 21 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So that's going to be a middling matchup for George Pickens. But if we're thinking that Pittsburgh's going to be competitive in this one, Pickens is going to need to get going in it, and it's going to set him up to have a decent game. Good thing with this matchup is we also know that, tendencies of some of these common players, like not Justin Tucker, but Pat Freiermuth had, he's not had many good games against Baltimore. It's kind of another situation where a player has a common opponent and he just does not do well against them. This year he had 4.6 DraftKings points, and he had 3.4 DraftKings points against them. And he's coming off of a few really good games where he had 22 DraftKings points and 12 DraftKings points. The Ravens are not a great tight end defense. They're allowing 12 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. 13 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So they're not that great against tight end, but they have done well against Freiermuth, and that could be, like a defensive scheme thing against Baltimore's particular, against Pittsburgh's particular offense. So Freiermuth has not done well against them. I think we can eliminate some of those guys when we take a look at those situations as far as from a captain situation. I think Pickens is in play as a captain. Russell Wilson is in play. This is a week on the main slate where I liked Russell Wilson a lot because all the quarterbacks this week had pretty poor matchups, and Russell Wilson was basically the lowest owned guy on the slate, so that was going to set him up to have a decent opportunity to give us a cheap quarterback option that could potentially be the highest scoring quarterback on the slate, and he's only at 9,400 in the flex. Zay Flowers is out. This is a big piece of the puzzle today because with Zay Flowers out, that's going to give more targets to the tight ends in Andrews and Likely, and it's also going to give more opportunities for guys like not only Nelson Aguilar, who is going to get all that slot work opening up with Zay Flowers running 38% of his routes in the slot, but also guys like Tylan Wallace at 2K here. Tylan Wallace, he's already had a big game this year against Cincinnati at 23.5 DraftKings points in that game, but gives us an idea of his upside when he's going to have more opportunity. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Rashad Bateman. Bateman's been good this year, but prior to, like some recent performances this year, he's kind of been, up and down throughout his career, but he has been good this year, and it's going to open up the door for him as well in this game. 18.6 DraftKings points last week, 8.4 in the second game against Pittsburgh, and 5 DraftKings points in that other game. The reason why I'm interested in the wide receiver position against Pittsburgh, whether it be Wallace or Bateman, is that Pittsburgh's giving up 26 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. So that's going to open things up for Wallace to have a decent game in this one, and he's cheap at 2K. So we have all sorts of options in the wide receiver situation. We're looking at Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren against this Baltimore defense. Jaylen Warren, I could see him getting a lot of work in the passing game in this one. I had that same theory the last time they played each other. He ended up with 14.2 DraftKings points, which got him in the optimal. He had 10.8 the prior time that he faced Baltimore. Baltimore is pretty good against the run. They're allowing only 20.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So I think both kickers are in play in this one, with it potentially being a lower scoring game. Tucker's been off this year. He's only had a few weeks over double-digit DraftKings points, but he's always going to be in play. And Boswell has just been a stud this year. He's had a lot of monster weeks, including a 26-pointer and a 24-pointer. In a low-scoring game, Boswell could be the captain in this one. And I don't think many people are going to go there with guys like Henry and Jackson on the slate, even though the matchup isn't that great for Jackson. Then we got Austin. Austin will be in play if you don't like Pickens, especially. That last game he had 10.5, but that was with Pickens out against Baltimore. Aguilar is in play with that slot work I was talking about. That's going to open up for him. And Williams will also be in play. At 2,800, Williams is another cheap option for us. So let's go ahead and build this. I'm running a little late today, so I want to get you guys this show as quickly as possible. I'm going to go with a chalky option. I'm going to go with the highest owned guy, Lamar Jackson. Let's give him Henry, because a lot of people starting Lamar Jackson are going to be expecting it to be a blowout type of situation like the spread projects. Let's give it Baltimore defense. I think a lot of people are going to go there. As far as the Pittsburgh side, maybe we give it Jaylen Warren, getting some receiving work, playing from behind. And let's go cheap here and give it Tylan Wallace. Going to leave us with 4,800, and that's going to leave us with Boswell. So that's a pretty good spot. We have Warren and Boswell on the Pittsburgh side. We got Jackson, Henry, Wallace on the Baltimore side, and the Ravens D. So that's one way that you could go with putting Lamar Jackson in there. You could these easily too. Go with Henry in the captain and Lamar Jackson in the flex. Leaves you with 4,800, so that's going to drop us from Boswell. Trying to see if there's anyone else worth putting in there. No. So yeah, you basically Likely is probably the best option there. Likely also, like I said, those tight ends are going to have good matchups in this one. So Likely, Aguilar, both good options. Justice Hill, another good option. So all sorts of options there for us with those guys being so cheap. Now get into a more fun build. Let's go with Pickens in the captain. Pickens is looking at a 7% ownership, so I like that. That's about the target range I look for in these types of games. I'm going to go with Russ Wilson in this one too. And this particular one, I'm going to have Henry over Jackson, because I think that, it's a close game where, maybe Baltimore has a lead for most of it, and maybe Russ and Pickens come alive at the end or close to the end. In this one, I want to give it at least Andrews or likely. I want to get one of these tight ends in. So I'm going to put Andrews in this one and see where that can get us. Oh, it looks like Justin Herbert just scored a touchdown here. Just checking this, see who scored. Oh, pick 6. All right. Well, yeah, that's not good for the Chargers, for anyone who has best ball exposure. So let's go on to the getting rid of Andrews, and let's put likely. I got played with that stupid tweet. Thanks, Underdog. Likely, I'm putting him in there with Henry. Got 4,500 left. I'm going to go ahead and put Boswell on this one too. That's going to leave us with 4,300, and that's going to put us in the situation where we have guys like Justice Hill. Since I have this being a closer game, I don't mind putting Justice Hill in there. I don't mind putting Aguilar. I don't mind the Steelers defense in this one, because Steelers defense is going to have to show up for Steelers to have any sort of a chance in this one, and they have dominated Lamar in the past. So Steelers D, I don't mind them at all. Let's go ahead and flip some of these guys out. I want to get let's get rid of Henry. Let's put Jackson back in there. 4,500. I think this would make sense to have Justice Hill in here instead. And then they're playing a more competitive game, potentially playing from behind in that one. I think I like that direction a little bit better. So I want to get Jaylen Warren in here too. So let's get rid of Boswell. Let's try to put in Warren, and that's going to leave us with 2K, 21K. 2,100. That's going to leave us in Tylan Wallace range. So like I spoke about at the top of the show, that's going to put him in play, which is going to be interesting. And that gives us a good Pickens lineup. So I like that direction for this slate. I'm going to get this up, guys. I'll leave my comments in the my picks in the comment section. Just get me to 30 likes and hit that subscribe button. Help me get to 1,600. You want to subscribe anyways to know when these shows are coming up. They come out at random times, so there's no set schedule on them. And you want to sign up for the alerts when you subscribe to the channel in order to get those. So, all right, guys, good luck. And I will see you for the Sunday slate.